Okay, welcome to the deep dive. We're about to plunge headfirst into one of those really big ones, a classic novel that it grapples with pretty much everything: human nature, faith, morality. It's a lot.
It really is. We're opening up Fyodor Dostoevsky's absolute titan, the brothers Karamazov. And for this deep dive, we're working from a stack of notes here, insights, bits from discussions about some really key parts of the novel.
Right. So this is your chance to maybe cut through some of the, let's say, density and get right to the heart of what makes this book just so powerful. And the characters, wow, unforgettable. Our mission today, basically pull out the crucial bits of knowledge about the brothers, their turbulent relationships, the big ideas floating around them, and make it all feel accessible and honestly pretty fascinating stuff.
Absolutely. We're going to walk you through some foundational moments. We'll meet the youngest brother, Alyosha, who's often seen as the sort of spiritual light, then uncover a really dark, kind of disturbing origin story for another key character.
And there's more. We'll get into some sharp intellectual debates, crime, belief, all that.
Yeah, and witness a family confrontation that gets so explosive. It's actually interrupted by this truly mysterious spiritual act. It's really a journey into the soul laid bare through these lives.
Okay, so let's start with that youngest brother, Alyosha Karamazov. He seems almost like an anomaly in this chaotic family setup.
Yes, the source material definitely highlights how distinct Alyosha is right from the get-go. He's described as having this innocent look, a genuinely pure soul.
And what immediately stands out, and the sources really stress this, is how people react to him. There's this almost like instinctive urge people have to help him.
Exactly. Even though he's poor, people just seem to offer him money. It's such a striking contrast to his brothers, isn't it?
Totally. You've got Dmitri, always tangled up in the material world, earning money, worrying about debts, his father's reputation, all that.
And then Ivan, the intense intellectual, maybe a bit detached from practical things like money, handles it more abstractly, perhaps.
Right. But Alyosha, he seems completely unconcerned with money, with wealth. And yet, when he needs something, help just appears. Often as money someone just gives him. It really points to something unique about him, doesn't it? Like a spiritual presence attracting kindness.
It's almost like his inner state just projects outwards, affecting people.
Hmm.
But, despite this outward purity and the positive effect he has, the sources also mention there's this underlying restlessness, a feeling that something's bothering him, a calling maybe, that he hasn't quite recognized yet. It's subtle, the sort of spiritual disquiet.
And a key piece of his inner life is this incredibly vivid memory of his mother. What's amazing is he was only 3 years old, yet the detail, the emotional impact is crystal clear years later.
Yeah, the memory itself, as the notes describe it, is really specific and poignant. He remembers his mother holding him really tightly, standing near a window, and sunlight, the sun's rays falling right on him. And the context is just heartbreaking. His mother suffered terribly, mostly because of Fyodor. And she was deeply worried, what would happen to little Alyosha if she wasn't there anymore. So this memory, it's not just a picture, it's soaked in his mother's pain and her protective love.
And the fact that he can still, all these years later, almost feel the room again, see the light, it just underlines how profound that early experience was. It wasn't fleeting. It was like imprinted on him.
Yeah, and this memory becomes a kind of driving force. It leads him to visit his father's town and quietly try to find his mother's grave. He asks Fyodor about it. It's just a simple request, hoping for maybe some connection, guidance.
And Fyodor's response here is just devastating, isn't it? The sources show this complete lack of knowledge, utter carelessness. He doesn't even know where his own deceased wife is buried. It just lays bare Fyodor's emptiness, his total disconnect from genuine human feeling, his inability to care about the past or the people in it, even the mother of his own son.
And this is where Gregory, the servant, steps in. And his role is shown to be much more than just, a hired hand. Gregory knows exactly where the grave is. The sources specifically mention Gregory's dedication, his big heart. They reveal he was the one who made sure the final rites were done properly for Alyosha's mother. He even paid for the gravestone himself.
Wow, that's incredible. Such a contrast to Fyodor.
A massive contrast. And it also reminds us, as the sources point out, Gregory was the one who initially looked after all three Karamazov boys when Fyodor basically abandoned them. It establishes his long-standing, almost fatherly role.
So Alyosha, with Gregory's help, finally finds the grave. And it's right there, standing by this physical link to his past, to his suffering mother, that this internal calling he'd been feeling starts to, well, crystallize. He gets overwhelmed by emotion, weeping there at the graveside.
Yes, that emotional release seems to be the turning point. That vague feeling that was nagging at him suddenly becomes a clear path forward. He goes and tells Fyodor he wants to become a monk.
This isn't just changing jobs, is it? It's a huge statement.
It's massive. It's an explicit rejection of the materialistic, chaotic world his family represents. He's choosing a spiritual journey, looking for deeper meaning.
And Fyodor's reaction.
Mm.
Oh boy. Classic Karamazov complexity, as you said. He agrees, surprisingly. He even says Alyosha reminds him of his mother, points to those eyes. But his reasons, they immediately sound fishy, don't they?
Absolutely. He claims his life's been full of sin, he wants to repent, and he hopes Alyosha praying as a monk will somehow, make up for his sins.
Right, like Alyosha can do is repenting for him.
Exactly. And he seals this performance with a big gesture, offering to donate 1,000 rubles to charity, a huge amount back then. On the surface, it looks generous, maybe even like real remorse.
But then comes the twist. His explanation for why he's donating just blows it all up. He claims the money is for his first wife's funeral. That's Dmitri's mother, which he admits he handled badly. He specifically says it's not for Alyosha's mother, whose grave Alyosha just visited, the very reason for this whole conversation.
It's a moment that just tells you everything about Fyodor's twisted mind. It's this weird mix of maybe guilt, a desire for some kind of atonement, but it's all filtered through performance, self-deception, and this shocking inability to connect with the actual emotional reality right in front of him. He's trying to buy forgiveness maybe, but he can't even aim it at the right person or situation. It highlights his knack for these grand theatrical gestures that are totally hollow inside.
Speaking of these deeply revealing backstories and the complex characters swirling around Fyodor's house, the sources give us this really fascinating, though quite dark, origin for Smerdyakov.
Yeah.
And it's deeply tied to Gregory.
Gregory, yeah, as we touched on, he's more than a servant. He's a figure of principle, really dedicated, loyal even, despite Fyodor being, well, Fyodor. He often ended up being the one Fyodor talked at when drunk, just patiently listening. It says a lot about his long-suffering nature, his sense of duty.
And we know he cared for the brothers. The sources also mention a personal tragedy for Gregory and his wife, Martha. They had a child born unwell who died very quickly.
Yeah, that tragedy hit Martha hard, left her quiet, serious. It just highlights that this couple, Gregory and Martha, they understood grief and loss themselves.
Right. And it's against this backdrop that we meet Lizaveta Smerdyakova. Her story, as the sources tell it, is just heartbreakingly tragic. Daughter of a poor, drunk father who beat her.
Her whole existence was just incredibly difficult. Lived like a nomad, often sleeping outside, in fields, gardens, ate mostly bread, and had this strange kind of generosity. If someone gave her food or money, she'd often give it away if she thought someone else needed it more. Just remarkable.
Her appearance reflected her hardship too, always in an old, long gown, even when it was cold. Refused any new clothes people offered. But people in town knew her, pitied her, often gave her food. She lived on the fringes, a figure of pity, maybe a bit of a local legend.
And the crucial moment, Smerdyakov's origin, happens late one night. Cold, storming thunder, lightning, rain. Gregory and Martha are in their little room right next to the main house's bathhouse, and they hear a baby crying outside. Gregory initially just dismisses it, thinks maybe it's a dream, or maybe, the ghost of his own dead child's cry haunting him. But the crying doesn't stop. It's real.
So he goes out.
He's compelled to, opens his door, goes into the stormy garden, the crying getting louder. Martha follows him, and there, in the bathhouse, they find Lizaveta Smerdyakova. She's in agony, clearly dying. She's just given birth. The crying is the newborn baby next to her.
Good grief. And this connects back to Fyodor.
In a deeply unsettling way, yes. The sources remind us of Fyodor's behavior after his first wife died, the wild parties, the drinking, chasing business deals, sucking up to wealthy visitors at a tavern, just completely dissolute.
Okay.
And it was outside that tavern, one night, the sources say, that Fyodor and some others saw Lizaveta hanging around. And later, word gets around town, Lizaveta is pregnant and Fyodor is the father. Now, Gregory, ever loyal, apparently defended Fyodor strongly against this rumor, denied it. But the source points out, the very fact that such a rumor could spread and seem plausible says everything about Fyodor's reputation, how low his moral standing was. It confirmed how far he'd sunk.
Even if he denied it, the rumor itself is damaging.
Exactly. Now, Lizaveta, despite everything, did get some kindness during her pregnancy. A good, wealthy woman in town looked after her. Other people helped too. But then, on the night she gives birth, she leaves that kind lady's house.
Why would she do that?
It's unclear, but this detail the sources highlight is extraordinary. Somehow, 9 months pregnant, she manages to climb the very high fence or wall around Fyodor's property. It's presented as this almost impossible, desperate final act. And she ends up dying in his bathhouse right after giving birth.
That's just horrific.
Gregory witnesses it all, Lizaveta's death, the baby's birth. The baby boy, surprisingly, is healthy. And Gregory, moved by compassion, maybe by the sheer tragedy of it, decides to adopt the boy. This child is named Smerdyakov.
So that's where Smerdyakov comes from.
That's the crucial origin story. It explains why he's there, in the household. He grows up on Fyodor's property, eventually becomes the cook. This background is just fundamental to understanding him, his place in the whole Karamazov mess. It brings up themes of suffering, paternity, biological versus adoptive, and that stark contrast between compassion, like Gregory's, and depravity, like Fyodor's, existing right next to each other. Gregory adopting him is such a powerful counterpoint to Fyodor's likely role and definite neglect.
Okay, so that dark history just simmering under the surface in the household, the main conflict, the really volatile one between Fyodor and Dmitri over money, inheritance, it hits boiling point, it's already heading to court. And then Fyodor decides to drag this whole ugly mess to a local monastery, setting the stage for something really dramatic.
Yeah, and the key figure at this monastery is Elder Zosima. These sources describe him as very high-ranking, deeply respected. He's a starets, which in the Orthodox tradition is a spiritual guide, a wise elder people seek out for counsel, for insight, someone believed to have real spiritual wisdom and discernment.
His presence is described almost mystically, isn't it? Like divine, healing. People believed he had spiritual power, this profound insight into people's true nature, maybe even an ability to sense hidden realities or aspects of the future. Not like predicting lottery numbers, but through this deep spiritual connection.
That's the sense you get. So Fyodor decides to bring the family fight before Elder Zosima. His motive, as presented, seems pretty calculated. He thinks Zosima's respected presence will somehow, shame everyone into a peaceful settlement. Avoid the public scandal of court.
And the fact that Alyosha, his pure son, is living right there at the monastery, training under Zosima, that probably adds another layer for Fyodor, doesn't it? Maybe he thinks it gives him some respectability.
Leverage. Could be. Maybe he thinks Alyosha's presence will sway things, or grant him some kind of favor. So a meeting is arranged for the next day at the monastery, the guest list. Fyodor, Ivan, Pyotr Musov. The sources identify him as Ivan's relative, educated in France, sometimes just called Musov, and they're waiting for Dmitri to show up. Plus, there are other monks in the main hall where this is all supposed to happen.
And while they're waiting for Dmitri, this intellectual debate kicks off in the hall, mostly between Ivan and Musov.
Right. Musov is set up as this worldly, educated guy, maybe thinks quite highly of himself, but Ivan, who's described as having this truly formidable intellect, he quickly takes charge of the conversation.
And the first big topic they tackle, according to the notes, is crime and the justice system. Ivan just launches into this sharp critique of the traditional penal system, especially imprisonment.
His argument is pretty radical, especially for back then. He basically says prisons don't work, they don't reform criminals. People commit crimes, go to prison, get out, and just do it again, or worse. The goal was reform, but it fails. It only addresses the outward act, not the inner person.
So what's his solution? It sounds pretty drastic.
It is. He proposes giving the whole responsibility for criminal reform to the church.
Wow, okay. Why?
His reasoning is that the church can reach the criminal on a much deeper level. Instead of just physical punishment, the church can instill a sense of spiritual downfall, a recognition that a crime isn't just against society, it's against your own soul. Criminals, Ivan argues, don't feel real remorse for their soul's state under the current system. They just feel punished or wronged by it.
So the church would focus on internal change.
Exactly. Through its teachings, its spiritual guidance, the church could make the criminal confront their deviation from, say, a path of God, awaken their inner conscience to the spiritual wrongness of their actions. And that, Ivan argues, is the only path to true regeneration, a kind of spiritual resurrection, not just locking someone up for a while.
That's a heavy argument.
Yeah.
And they move on to something equally big.
Yeah, immortality and its link to morality. Ivan draws this direct, really forceful line between understanding right and wrong morality and believing in life after death, immortality.
How does he connect those?
His argument is stark. Belief in an afterlife where your actions have real, eternal consequences, reward for good, punishment for bad, that belief is absolutely essential for morality to even exist or have any force. If people don't believe in an afterlife, then the fear of God, the ultimate judge, just disappears. And without that ultimate accountability, Ivan says, it becomes incredibly hard, maybe impossible, for people to truly know or care about right and wrong in this life. Everything becomes permissible if there are no eternal stakes.
Okay, but here's the kicker, isn't it? The big paradox with Ivan, which the sources make sure to point out. Ivan himself, he's an atheist.
Exactly. That's the core of his torment, isn't it? He's making these powerful arguments for the necessity of belief in God and immortality for morality to function, sounding like a passionate believer while intellectually rejecting the whole thing. It shows this brilliant mind just wrestling with the consequences of its own disbelief. It's not just an intellectual game for him. It's a deep internal struggle.
And Elder Zosima, with that uncanny insight we talked about, he sees this instantly. The sources say Zosima addresses Ivan directly, acknowledges his reputation as an atheist, the controversial articles he's written on these very topics.
But Zosima looks right past that intellectual front. He tells Ivan basically, look, you present yourself as an atheist, but inside there's this fierce battle raging. You're fighting with yourself about God's existence. Zosima understands that Ivan's articles, his arguments, they aren't statements of settled belief or disbelief even. They're the product of this profound inner turmoil, this desperate search for certainty one way or the other.
How does Ivan take that, being seen so clearly?
He's clearly taken aback. Surprised, maybe even shaken, he realizes Zosima has seen right through him, right to the vulnerable, struggling core. It's a powerful moment showing Zosima's spiritual depths.
And Ivan actually bows to him.
He does. A rare show of respect from Ivan, acknowledging Zosima's profound insight. And Zosima, rather than judging, responds with compassion. He prays for Ivan, wishes him peace of mind, a resolution to his questions, an end to that internal battle. He stresses how important it is for humans to have some belief system, something to hold on to. And interestingly, the source notes that earlier, when Fyodor was acting the buffoon, Zosima had also shown insight, telling Fyodor to stop lying to himself, warning that constant self-deception destroys the ability to see truth anywhere, leading to total moral decay. So Zosima is seeing the core issues in different ways in different people.
That whole exchange is intense. But it's really just the setup for the main event, isn't it? Because right then, Dmitri finally arrives. The family's all there.
And boom. Just as everyone feared, the argument between Fyodor and Dmitri erupts immediately, straight to the sore spot, money and land.
Fyodor goes right on the attack.
Instantly. Accusing Dmitri of owing him money, waving signed papers around as proof.
And Dmitri,
just as fast, denies the papers mean anything, claims Fyodor tricked him, says the court will sort it out. But it doesn't stay on finances for long. It gets personal, fast, and ugly.
Fyodor really twists the knife, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. He brings up Dmitri's messy love life, accuses him of ditching his rich fiancée. Katerina, the source, identifies her as a high-ranking officer's daughter, the first big female character we hear about who lives elsewhere.
And then throws Grushenka in his face.
Exactly. Highlights Dmitri's current infatuation with Grushenka, the second key female character who lives locally. Fyodor claims Dmitri is blowing his money on Grushenka, saying Dmitri is madly in love. He even throws in this little barb that Grushenka lives with someone else, not even with Dmitri. Trying to diminish them both, maybe?
Dmitri must have exploded.
Well, he fires back. Claims Fyodor is also interested in Grushenka, alleges Fyodor hired her for his bar and then got obsessed with her himself. Dmitri clearly thinks Fyodor is lying about the money, maybe wants him out of the picture either for Grushenka or the inheritance.
Right. He also tries to defend himself against another accusation about beating some guy.
Yeah, Fyodor paints this picture of Dmitri just dragging a man out of a bar and beating him senseless for no reason, proof he's a brute. Dmitri shouts back, it wasn't senseless. The man wasn't a stranger. He claims it was someone Fyodor had sent, probably with papers or messages about the money or Grushenka, and Dmitri reacted because the guy was part of Fyodor's schemes. He insists he wouldn't just attack a random person.
But regardless of who's right about the details, it just spirals.
Completely out of control. They're shouting, screaming at each other. In this monastery hall, it's public monks watching, Nusov, Ivan. Alyosha is visibly distressed, stuck right in the middle of his family, just imploding again.
The tension must have been incredible. You mentioned Dmitri's described as powerful to felt like violence could break out.
Definitely. There's a real sense it could turn physical between father and son at any second. The air is thick with it.
And it's at this peak of chaos. This is when Zosima acts.
Precisely. Amidst all the shouting and fury, Elder Zosima does something utterly shocking, totally bewildering. He stands up, he walks deliberately over towards Dmitri, and then he kneels down right in front of Dmitri. Kneels, and then bows down completely, touches his forehead to the floor, right there at Dmitri's feet. After this extraordinary silent gesture, he just gets up and goes back to his seat.
What do people do? What's the reaction?
Stunned silence. Utter confusion. Nobody's ever seen the revered Elder Zosima do anything like this, ever. Especially not in the middle of a public, ugly family fight, and aimed specifically at Dmitri.
How does Dmitri react?
He's visibly shaken, you can tell, even though he clearly has no idea what it means. He bolts from the room almost immediately, still shouting angry things at Fyodor as he leaves. The anger may be covering up his own confusion and shock about what just happened.
And Musov?
Musov's had enough, totally disgusted by the whole scene, calls it a disgrace and decides he's leaving too, wants nothing more to do with this Karamazov drama.
And Fyodor?
Yeah.
How does he react to Musov leaving?
Oh, Fyodor's reaction is peak Fyodor. Bizarre. He follows Musov, seems worried about his own reputation being damaged by the scene. Then he starts arguing with Musov about who should leave first. Insists he should leave because his honor is hurt, but at the same time tells Musov to stay for the lunch they were invited to.
Confusing.
It perfectly shows his performative nature. He claims disrespect, but seems more obsessed with controlling how things look, even as he's the one causing the chaos. He heads off towards his carriage, but gives Musov, who's watching him, trying to figure out if he's serious, this sarcastic little smile. Musov is left completely baffled about Fyodor's real intentions.
But there was a lunch planned.
Yeah.
With the Father Superior.
Yes. Despite the dramatic exits and Fyodor's weirdness, the lunch invitation still stood. For Fyodor, Ivan, Musov, Alyosha, and others.
Does anyone actually go?
Somewhat awkwardly, Musov does proceed to the lunch area. Ivan and Alyosha go too, along with the monks.
And Alyosha is still trying to process Zosima's bow.
Yes. On the way to lunch, he's talking with a younger, novice monk. And this beginner monk is totally bewildered by the bow. Asks Alyosha, what did that mean? Was it a sign of something good? Or something terrible coming for Dmitri? And Alyosha admits he doesn't know either, but he feels it was profoundly significant. It just deepens the mystery for everyone, including us listeners.
So at the lunch, Musov and Ivan apologize.
They do. Feeling responsible since they arrived with Fyodor and Ivan as family, they apologize to the Father Superior and the other monks for the Karamazov's behavior. The Father Superior asks where Fyodor and Dmitri are, and they explain what happened.
But the drama isn't quite over, is it?
Not by a long shot, because unexpectedly, Fyodor shows up at the lunch hall.
Oh, no.
Makes a grand dramatic entrance, announces something like, well, everyone already thinks I'm evil, so I might as well act like it. And he immediately starts arguing again with Musov, who's there, but then he starts insulting the monks themselves, just completely disrespecting the place, the occasion, everything.
What triggers this new outburst?
He actually complains that Musov interrupted him earlier, back in the hall with Zosima and Dmitri. It shows his incredibly petty focus on perceived slights against himself while he's being monstrously disrespectful to everyone else. Then he escalates it further, declares he's taking Alyosha away from the monastery, speaks harshly to Alyosha, insults the monks even more, just burns every bridge.
So Musov leaves again.
Musov's had it. Angered beyond words by Fyodor's renewed outrageous behavior, he leaves the lunch for good. Says he can't stay in the same room. Ivan gets up and leaves too, following Musov. It solidifies their break from Fyodor's antics for the moment. Fyodor leaves shortly after, heading for his carriage.
And there's one last strange interaction in the carriage.
Yes, on the way home, in this final bizarre mood swing, Fyodor tries to talk to Ivan as if nothing major just happened, suggests they stop somewhere for wine, lighten the mood.
Seriously? After all that?
Seriously. But Ivan just stays silent, offers no response at all. And that non-interaction perfectly sums up Fyodor: volatile, unpredictable, capable of huge public drama one second, and then casual, almost oblivious suggestions the next. It makes his true feelings, his real intentions, completely unreadable and deeply unsettling, even for his own son.
Right. So we're left hanging with this huge, compelling mystery. What on earth did Elder Zosima's bow to Dmitri mean in that specific moment of family rage?
Exactly. And the source material when discussing this really invites you to chew on the possibilities. Was it like a prophecy? Did Zosima foresee some terrible suffering Dmitri was destined for? Was it a kind of spiritual acknowledgement of some immense burden Dmitri carries without even knowing it?
Or maybe a profound insight into Dmitri's soul, his destiny, that Zosima with his spiritual X-ray vision could see, but no one else could. The ambiguity is what makes it so powerful, isn't it?
It really is, and it ties right back to how Zosima has described his ability to see people's inner reality. Maybe foresee isn't about literal predictions, but about a spiritual understanding so deep it perceives the consequences, the destiny, already woven into the fabric of someone's soul. It makes you feel the bow wasn't just symbolic, it was significant, maybe prophetic, within the book's spiritual world.
These scenes we've walked through, they just lay bare the core dynamics, the real natures of the Karamazovs and the people caught up with them. You see Alyosha starting down his spiritual path right in the middle of all this chaos and, frankly, depravity.
And you see Fyodor revealed so starkly his deep flaws, his capacity for, well, immense depravity. Think about the Smerdyakov story, his constant performing, his petty vanity. It's all there.
The Dimitri's volatile passion, how he's tangled up in the core conflicts of money and desire. He feels like the potential epicenter of the family's implosion.
And Ivan, the brilliant mind, but locked in this deep internal war over faith, doubt, what morality even rests on. Contrasted with Gregory, maybe, the quiet duty, the unexpected compassion, a kind of moral anchor in the madness.
And Zosima himself, embodying spiritual depth, mysterious insight, acting in ways that defy easy answers but carry immense weight.
And all of this, as the sources suggest, taps right into the book's huge themes. That fundamental human search for meaning in a world that can feel so empty.
The intense spiritual struggle belief versus atheism played out so dramatically inside Ivan.
The tangled, often destructive, but maybe sometimes redemptive complexities of family. That potent mix of love, hate, conflict, duty.
And the sheer coexistence within people of both terrible depravity and profound goodness, often right alongside each other.
Yeah, and how these characters wrestle, agonize really, with guilt, with sin, and with that constant question. Is redemption possible? Is spiritual regeneration actually achievable?
We've really just scratched the surface here, haven't we? Taken a deep dive into just a few intense, revealing moments from the brothers Karamazov.
Absolutely. And as you've heard, the source material we've been drawing on really helps illuminate some crucial aspects of these incredibly complex characters and the intertwined, often tragic paths they seem to be on.
So as you think about all this, maybe linger on that mystery. Zosima's bow. How can a single, silent gesture from a spiritual figure feel so loaded with meaning, potentially casting this huge shadow or maybe a strange light on a character's entire future?
And maybe also consider how the deepest struggles, whether it's Ivan wrestling intellectually with God or Dmitri battling his own turbulent passions, often happen way down inside, hidden from view. It's a powerful nudge, isn't it? To look beyond the surface in these characters and maybe, just maybe, in ourselves and others around us, because that's where the real drama and perhaps the real meaning truly lies.